Honourable Member for Clark, Leader of the Greens.
Mr Speaker, I rise tonight to honour the life of a most beautiful and wildly creative Tasmanian soul, one of our greats, filmmaker and artist Roger Scholes.
Oh, yeah, that's very sad.
Mr Speaker, my heart felt so heavy when I read news of his premature death at the age of 71 a little more than a week ago. Roger Scholes was an extraordinary and rare man. He had this incredible intelligence and this bottomless well of empathy and humanity, and sometimes I know it completely overwhelmed him. The world did, people did, their circumstances, the state of the natural world. Roger Scholes was a filmmaker of international renown. He produced that incredible film, The Tale of Ruby Rose, which captured the haunting and harsh beauty of the Tasmanian highlands. He was also an historian, a recorder of our histories, and he made the 1982 documentary, The Franklin River Blockade, and captured so well that important history of our island. So many people feel so sad, Mr Speaker. I'll just quote from Breath of Fresh Air Film Festival director Owen Tilbury, who worked with Mr Scholes over the years and said he was a man fully dedicated to his craft. Mr Tilbury said Mr Scholes is one of Tasmania's most iconic early auteurs who shaped the filmmaking scene of his time. He said he'd remember Mr Scholes as a filmmaker with a strong social conscience, an empathy for outsiders and a willingness to suffer for his art. He quotes, "He was more than happy to suffer physical privation, financial challenges and intellectual battles with various people for his art," Mr Tilbury said. "He'll be very, very much missed because this is the passing of a true icon and a giant of the Tasmanian film industry." One of Roger's defining characteristics was his deep identification with Tasmanian Aboriginal people, and he burned, Mr Speaker, not quietly but gently, but he burned with a sense of injustice about what happened to Tasmanian Aboriginal people over the last more than 200 years, and he was always trying to do something to make it a bit better. And he did that incredible installation at William Crowther's statue in Franklin Square, which was an acknowledgement that, you know, Crowther was obviously a complicated man, but an acknowledgement of the travesty of Crowther's treatment of Aboriginal man William Lanny. He also was working with Aboriginal Tasmanian people to understand better cultural burning practices, and I sat down with Roger last year and talked about this project where he was going out on country and looking at those cool burning practices. And he didn't have a lot of money, Mr Speaker, this great filmmaker and wonderful artist. He didn't have a lot of money and he needed a bit of help to buy a film camera. So last July, Roger and his beautiful, clever wife, Catherine, who's a renowned author in her own right, came to dinner with Dr Woodruff and I down here in the dining room, and it was just a wonderful conversation. His curious mind and his big heart took us all over the place, and Catherine's just a delight with the most fierce intelligence. So I want to send my deepest condolences, Mr Speaker, to his wife Catherine, his sons Johnny and Lyndon. And I'm sure you know Catherine, Johnny and Lyndon. I'm sure you know this. But your husband, your dad, your friend was one of the great Tasmanians. He was so well loved, and his was a life of giving and sharing, of teaching, of loving and curiosity and kindness. And Mr Speaker, there's a song going around in my head, and it's Don McLean's beautiful song, Vincent. And this reminds me of Roger. I could have told you, Vincent, this world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. Mr. Speaker, Vale, the wonderful, wonderful Roger Scholes.
Yes.